When we think about the basic building blocks of life, our minds usually jump straight to DNA, right? Or maybe proteins. But what if I told you there's another language, a hidden one, that's way more complex, that life uses to build itself? Today, let's pull back the curtain on these unseen architects, complex sugars.
So, to kick things off, let me ask you this. What on earth could a bacterium's protective shell possibly have in common with the cushiony cartilage in your own knees? I mean, they sound like they're from completely different worlds, don't they?
Well, believe it or not, the answer is complex sugars. Yep, these amazing molecules are the common thread. They act as both microscopic armor and as biological shock absorbers. So in this explainer, we're going to meet two of these incredible master builders. First up, we're diving into the world of the super, super small. We're going to look at this stuff that gives bacteria its incredible strength and shape, a kind of biological chainmail called peptidoglycan. Okay, check this out. What's so cool about this slide is it shows the main difference between two major types of bacteria. See on the right, the gram-positive ones have this super thick, dense wall of that peptidoglycan armor, but on the left, the gram-negative guys, just a tiny thin layer. And this difference is absolutely crucial because it changes how well antibiotics work. That thick armor can literally block the drugs from getting inside. Let's get even closer to one of those gram-positive bacteria. You see all those layers stacked up outside the cell's main membrane? That's the armor we're talking about. It's an incredible barrier, sometimes 25 nanometers thick, and it does a fantastic job protecting the cell inside. So what is this stuff exactly? Well, the name kind of gives it away. Peptido comes from peptides. Those are just short little proteins. And glycan is the fancy word for sugar. So it's a hybrid material, this amazing mesh made of sugar chains that are all stitched together by proteins. And here you can see that structure right down at the molecular level. You've got these long sugar chains running in one direction, and then those little peptide links basically stitch them all together into the strong but still flexible sheet. It's like weaving a microscopic suit of armor, and it's what makes that bacterial cell wall so tough. All right, so we've seen bacterial armor. Now, let's bring it back home, inside our own bodies. We're going to shift gears to our second architect, the proteoglycans. Think of these as our body's own jello, the stuff that gives us all our cushioning and support. So what's a proteoglycan? Once again, the name is a total giveaway. Proteo for the protein part, and glycan for the sugar part. It's basically a central protein core with these super long sugar chains, called GAGs for short, sticking out all over it. This is such a great picture of it. Scientists call this a bottle brush structure, and you can totally see why. That long line in the middle is the protein core, and all those fuzzy bristles are the GAGs. Their whole design is meant to take up a ton of space and, crucially, to hold onto water like a sponge. And where do you find these little bottle brushes? Oh, just about everywhere we need some padding or lubrication. They're a huge part of your cartilage and skin, but also the fluid that keeps your joints moving smoothly, and even the jelly-like stuff that fills your eyeballs. They really are the gel of our bodies. And that gets us to their main job. Because they can hold on to so much water, they create these massive, slimy, gel-like networks. Think about it. When you jump, the proteoglycans in your knees get squeezed, they push out water, and then they suck it right back in when the pressure is off. They're perfect natural shock absorbers. Okay, now let's zoom in on those sugar chains themselves, the GAGs. How can something that sounds so basic create so many different things? Well, it turns out it's all based on a really simple but super powerful construction kit. The recipe is actually dead simple. You just take one kind of sugar, a hexosamine, and you pair it with another one, usually a uronic acid. That's it. That's your two-part building block. Then you just repeat that pattern over and over and over again to build a really long chain. But this is where the magic happens. By just slightly tweaking those sugar units or maybe adding on some other chemical groups, you can create a whole family of different GAGs. You can see how you get things like hyaluronan or the blood thinner heparin or chondroitin sulfate. They all have totally different jobs, but they're all built from that same simple two-part recipe. It's like having a Lego set with just a few types of bricks that can build anything. So far, we've talked about sugars as structural things, right? Armor and cushioning. But honestly, that's not even half the story. These molecules are also critical communicators. They're sending and receiving signals that control the very life of our cells. This slide shows how they pull off this double duty. Up top, you see them floating around in the space between our cells, forming that gel we talked about. But look at the bottom. You can also see them anchored directly to the cell surface, where they act like tiny antennas, listening for signals. And what are those antennas doing? They are speaking a secret language. These sugars have a direct hand in controlling how our cells grow, how our body handles inflammation, how our blood clots, how cells stick to each other, even how our tissues develop in the first place. They are not just passive scaffolding, they are active directors of the whole show. And this quote from the source material just hits the nail on the head. One of their most important signaling jobs is to grab onto things like growth factors and hold them right there on the cell surface. They basically create a little stockpile of important signals ready to be used whenever the cell needs them. Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. We've gone from bacterial armor to the gel that cushions our joints, all the way to the signaling antennas on our cells. It's pretty clear that in so many ways, our world is literally built on a foundation of sugars. Now, prepare to have your mind blown. We think of proteins as being really complex, and they are. If you take just 6 amino acids, you can string them together in about 64 million different ways. That's a big number. But what happens if you take 6 simple sugar units? The number of possibilities isn't in the millions, it's not even in the billions or trillions. It's 1.44 times quadrillion. That is 1,000 million million. The information-carrying potential of sugars, what scientists call the glycomic code, just completely dwarfs that of proteins or even DNA. The structural vocabulary these sugars have is just immense. And listen, this isn't just some abstract biology fact. This complexity is all around you every single day. The cotton shirt you might be wearing, that's a glycan called cellulose. The life-saving blood thinner drug, heparin, that's one of the GAGs we just talked about. Even the gel scientists use to analyze DNA is a sugar. We've been using the power of these molecules for a long, long time. So, if there's one thing to take away, it's this. Sugars are so much more than just energy. They form a biological language of staggering complexity, a code that we're really only just starting to understand. And that leaves us with one final incredible question. In a code that's more complex than our own genome, what other secrets about life, health, and disease are just waiting for us to discover?